He called her simple. He called her provincial. As he adjusted his $50,000 Vacheron Constantin watch, Marcus Vance looked at his wife, Kate, with utter contempt. He was a man on the rise in New York finance, and in his eyes, she was dead weight. He was taking his polished, ambitious mistress to the Future Horizons Gala, leaving his simple wife at home. But as he stepped onto the red carpet, basking in the flashbulbs, a swarm of reporters from Forbes and Bloomberg suddenly abandoned him. They rushed past their cameras, flashing towards a single, unassuming woman. A woman Marcus was about to discover wasn't just his wife, but the $90 billion heir he'd just publicly destroyed his life over. The penthouse on Park Avenue was a monument to Marcus Vance's ambition. Every surface was cold, reflective, and aggressively modern. It was a space designed not to be lived in, but to be seen. Marcus himself was cut from the same cloth. At 35, he was a rising vice president at Stratton Pierce Capital, a man who measured his worth by the sharpness of his Tom Ford suits and the appreciative glances he received. His wife, Kate, was an anomaly in this curated world. Kate, for God's sake! Marcus sighed, his voice dripping with exasperation. He was standing in the doorway of their cavernous walk-in closet, which was really his closet with a small section for her. Kate turned. She was holding a simple navy blue A-line dress. It was elegant, modest, and utterly devoid of the logos and aggressive tailoring Marcus favored. "What's wrong, Marcus? I thought this was nice for the fundraiser tonight." Marcus physically recoiled. "Nice, Kate. This is the Children's Literacy Fund dinner. The entire board of Stratton Pierce will be there. My boss, Mr. Harrison, will be there. You look provincial. You look like you're attending a PTA meeting in Westchester, not a $10,000-a-plate dinner in Manhattan." Kate's smile, usually so steady, faltered for a moment. "I just don't feel comfortable in those shiny dresses you like." "What I like, Kate," he said, stepping forward, "is for my wife to look like she belongs. You are a reflection of me. When you look simple, I look like I'm failing." He pulled a black sequined and very low-cut dress from its hanger. "Wear this." Chloe picked it out. She said it's what a power couple wife would wear. Chloe. The name hung in the air like toxic perfume. Chloe Preston was Marcus's work colleague, a sleek, platinum-blonde associate who seemed to be permanently attached to his side. Kate knew with the quiet, painful certainty of a woman who is no longer looked at that Chloe was much more than a colleague. "I'm not Chloe," Kate said softly, pushing the sequined dress away. "I'll wear the blue. It's appropriate." Marcus's face darkened. "Fine. But you sit at the end of the table. And please, Kate, I'm begging you, don't talk about your volunteer work at the library. It's embarrassing. People are talking about mergers, about IPOs, and my wife is discussing the Dewey Decimal System. Just smile and stay quiet." He turned and left the room, the sharp click of his Italian leather shoes on the marble floor echoing his cutting words. Kate stood alone, the simple blue dress in her hands. She closed her eyes. She had married Marcus Vance 4 years ago. He had been charming, then ambitious, but with a spark of kindness. He'd found her working at a small independent bookstore in the West Village, a job she'd taken to feel normal. She'd told him she was an orphan with a small trust fund that paid for her modest apartment. He had been enchanted by her, he'd said. She was real and grounded, a refreshing change from the high-maintenance women he knew. But that was before his promotion, before the penthouse, before his real life began. Now her grounded nature was simple, Her reality was provincial. Later that evening, the dinner was as agonizing as she'd predicted. Marcus sat at the center of the table, flanked by his boss and a beaming Chloe, who was wearing the black sequined dress. Kate was, as instructed at the very end, next to a junior analyst who was too busy texting to speak. Marcus was holding court, telling a loud, boastful story about a recent hostile takeover. And I told them, you either adapt or you die. In this city, there's no room for simplicity. He glanced down the table at Kate, a smirk playing on his lips. Chloe laughed, a high-pitched tinkling sound that grated on Kate's nerves. A hand suddenly covered hers. It was Mrs. Harrison, the CEO's wife, a woman in her late 60s with kind eyes. "Don't you mind him, dear?" she whispered, leaning in. "That young man's forgotten that the loudest gong is always hollow." Kate gave her a grateful smile. "Thank you, Mrs. Harrison." "Besides," the older woman said, "I find your work at the 2nd Avenue shelter admirable. My granddaughter volunteers there. She says you've practically rebuilt their entire donation system." Kate brightened. "Oh, it's wonderful work. We're trying to secure a new tech grant." "Kate," Marcus's voice boomed down the table, silencing the conversation. "We're trying to have a serious discussion here. Please, not the charity work." The table went quiet. Mrs. Harrison's hand tightened on Kate's. Chloe covered her mouth, a faux polite gesture to hide her triumphant smile. Kate felt the flush creep up her neck. She looked at Marcus, the man she had promised to love, and for the first time she felt nothing but a cold, hard stone of pity. She had wanted to be loved for herself. She had gone to extraordinary lengths to ensure it. She had hidden her name, her family, her entire identity, all for the sake of finding one person who wouldn't see her as a dollar sign. As she sat there humiliated, her phone buzzed in her purse. A simple encrypted message. It was one word. "Enough." Kate looked at her husband laughing with his mistress. She looked at the table of ambitious, predatory faces. She typed back a single word reply. "Enough." The text message had come from her father's chief of staff, a man who had been her silent guardian for 4 years. The instruction "enough" wasn't a question. It was an activation. The great quiet experiment of Kate Vance's life was over. The next few weeks were a study in accelerating cruelty. Now that Marcus had publicly humiliated her and faced no repercussions, in fact, his boss, Mr. Harrison, seemed displeased with him, not Kate, which only confused and angered Marcus further. He felt emboldened. He dropped all pretense of a partnership. "The Future Horizons Gala is in 2 weeks," he announced one morning, not looking up from his Wall Street Journal. "It's the biggest night of the year. Stratton Pierce is sponsoring a table. I'm taking Chloe." Kate, who was stirring oatmeal at the stove. A simple breakfast. Marcus refused to eat, preferring an $18 smoothie, paused. "Chloe Marcus, I'm your wife." "Exactly," he sneered, finally looking at her. He gestured to her simple flannel pajama pants and t-shirt. "Look at you. You are my wife, and Chloe is my partner. The gala is about networking, Kate. It's about presence, power, image. Chloe understands that. She's hungry. You're just comfortable." "I can be those things," Kate said, her voice dangerously quiet. "You've never asked me to be." "Asked you?" He laughed, a harsh, barking sound. "My God, Kate, you don't ask a woman to have ambition. She either has it or she doesn't. You don't have it. You're content to arrange books and serve soup. It's pathetic." He stood, adjusting his cufflinks. "I'm going to be meeting people, real people. I'm talking about titans. I'm talking about the kind of money that makes our little life here look like a shack." I can't have you clinging to my arm, asking them if they've read any good books lately. What if I just came? Kate tested, watching his face. Absolutely not. You would embarrass me. You don't have the dress, you don't have the conversation, and you don't have the name. You're Mrs. Vance, a nobody. Chloe at least is a rising star at the firm. Her presence makes sense. He walked over, and in a gesture that was almost comical in its condescension, patted her on the head. Stay home. Order a pizza. Read a book. Do whatever it is you do. This is a night for adults. The door slammed shut. The oatmeal in the pot began to burn. Kate turned off the stove. The mask of the simple wife fell away. Her face, usually so open and gentle, hardened into something that looked very much like her father. She picked up her phone and made a call. Julian, it's me. The gala in 2 weeks. The Future Horizons gala at the Met. I need an invitation. The man on the other end, Julian Hayes, her father's head of security and operations, sounded relieved. Ms. Thorne, we've had an invitation held for you for 4 years. I assume you won't be attending as Mrs. Vance? No, Kate said, walking to the penthouse window and looking down at the city. I'll be attending as myself. And Julian, I need you to arrange a fitting with Vogue. And call Susan Preston. Tell her to prepare the paperwork. The contingency paperwork. Understood, Ms. Thorne. It's good to have you back. It's good to be back, she replied, and hung up. For the next 2 weeks, Marcus was almost giddy. He and Chloe were inseparable, having public planning dinners at Daniel and Per Se. They'd return to the penthouse late, laughing Marcus, reeking of Chloe's Frederic Malle perfume. He'd toss his jacket on the floor, a new habit of disrespect, and walk past Kate as if she were a piece of furniture. Kate, for her part, played the role of the spurned, simple wife perfectly. She was quiet, mournful, and mousy. The more she retreated, the more Marcus's contempt grew. He's unbearable, Kate told Julian one afternoon. She was in a secret downtown loft, a sterile high-tech command center, run by her father's family office. She was not wearing flannel. She was wearing a tailored wool suit. Her hair was pulled back, and she was signing a stack of documents. The man is a fool, Ms. Thorne, Julian said, handing her a pen. He's a classic social climber. He's so focused on the next rung, he doesn't realize the ladder is resting on nothing. He's about to find out, Kate said, her pen moving swiftly. This was Susan Preston's work. The documents were a petition for divorce, citing infidelity and emotional distress. But they were not what would ruin him. That honor belonged to another document. The prenuptial agreement, Susan Preston said, video conferencing in on a large screen. Susan was the sharpest divorce attorney in New York, and her services were retained exclusively by Kate's father. Are you sure you want to execute this, Kate? It's, devastating. Marcus was the one who insisted on it, Kate said. He thought I was an orphan with a small trust. He wanted to protect his future earnings from me. He signed a document protecting his VP salary from you, Susan said with a grim smile, while also signing away any and all claims to any undiscovered inherited or future assets of his spouse. He was so busy protecting his molehill, he signed away any claim to your mountain. He didn't even have his own lawyer read it. He just signed. He was arrogant, Kate said. He thought I was simple. He thought I was stupid. Let him live with that. She signed the final page. File this. The morning after the gala. Understood. One last thing, Miss Thorne. Yes. Your father called. He's delighted. He said, it's about time. He's flying in for the gala. Kate's composure broke for a second. Her father, Augustus Thorne, the reclusive, press-shy founder and CEO of Ethelred Holdings, the $90 billion global conglomerate, never attended public events. "He's coming. He wouldn't miss this," Julian said. "He'll be waiting for you inside." The night before the gala, Marcus was electric, a live wire of anticipation and cruelty. He strode into the penthouse, tossing a garment bag from Tom Ford onto the white sofa. "This," he announced to Kate, who was packing a small suitcase, "is what success looks like." Kate paused. A suit. "This is a custom-made midnight blue velvet tuxedo. This is what you wear when you're about to change your life. Tomorrow night, Chloe and I are going to be the center of attention. I've already heard a rumor that Augustus Thorne might be there." Kate's hand froze on a folded sweater. Augustus Thorne, the Ethelred CEO. He never goes out. "That's the point, Kate. It's a rumor. But even a rumor like that brings out the real sharks. This is the night I secure my managing director position. Harrison will have to give it to me after he sees me work that room." He looked at her suitcase. "And what's this running away back to wherever it is you came from?" "I'm going to stay with a friend from the library for a few days." Kate said, her voice a perfect imitation of defeated. I don't want to be here when you and Chloe, when you come back." Marcus actually smiled. It was a reptilian, satisfied expression. Her moping was the proof he needed that he was the victor, the one who was winning at life. "Good. That's smart. Probably the first smart thing you've said all month. It would be awkward. You here with your sad little face when I'm celebrating the biggest night of my life." He pulled out his phone, already texting. "I've already transferred your allowance for the month. That should cover your pizza and whatever else it is you buy. Knitwear, I assume." He was texting Chloe. Kate could see the preview on his lock screen. "Chloe, can't wait for tomorrow. Red dress is 10:10. Marcus." "She's finally leaving. The apartment is ours, baby. Tomorrow, the city is ours." "Thank you, Marcus," Kate said, zipping the bag. "You're very generous." "Yes, I am," he said, distracted. "Now, if you don't mind, I need to prepare. Chloe is coming over to help me. Go over the guest list." Kate nodded. She picked up her suitcase. It contained only the simple clothes of Kate Vance. The rest of her, the person she actually was already staged in a suite at the St. Regis. She walked to the door. She paused, her hand on the handle. "Marcus, what?" He snapped, annoyed at the interruption. "I hope you get everything you deserve." He scoffed. "Oh, I will, Kate. Believe me, I will." She walked out the door and didn't look back. She got into the elevator, and the simple wife persona dissolved. Her shoulders straightened. Her expression became sharp, focused. When the elevator doors opened in the lobby, Julian was waiting for her, holding the door of a black-armored Audi A8L. "How was it, Ms. Thorne?" "It was clarifying," Kate said, sliding into the leather seat. "He's just as hollow as you said. The team is ready. The dress is at the suite. Your father lands at Teterboro in 1 hour. Susan Preston has a process server on standby, ready to serve Mr. Vance at 7 a.m. the day after tomorrow." "And the press?" Kate asked, looking at the city lights streak by. "Confirmed," Julian said. "Sarah Jensen from the Wall Street Journal and David Chen from Bloomberg will be on the carpet. They've been given a specific tip. that a major press-shy figure from Ethelred Holdings will be making a statement. They think it's your father." "They're not entirely wrong," Kate said. "He'll be there, but I'll be the one making the statement." Meanwhile, back in the penthouse, Chloe had arrived. She and Marcus were drinking champagne, Marcus's new tuxedo hanging on display like a holy relic. "She's finally gone?" Chloe asked, wrapping her arms around his neck. "Finally. God, it was like living with a ghost, a very judgmental, very boring ghost. And she really said she hopes you get everything you deserve." Chloe laughed. "How adorable. She has no idea, does she?" "She has no idea about anything," Marcus said, kissing her. "She's a simpleton, sweet but simple. She served her purpose." "What purpose was that?" "She was stable, domestic. She was what I needed when I was just a VP. But I'm not just a VP anymore. I'm a killer, Chloe. And I need a queen, not a housekeeper." "To us," Chloe said, raising her glass. "To the future king and queen of New York." "To us," Marcus agreed, clinking his glass against hers. Across town, Kate was standing in front of a three-way mirror at the St. Regis. The Vogue stylists had just left. The dress was not a simple blue A-line. It was a custom-made Oscar de la Renta gown. It was not black or red or any of the power colors Marcus would have chosen. It was a breathtaking, ethereal midnight blue crafted from layers of silk chiffon that seemed to float. It was understated yet incandescently expensive. But the dress was not the statement. The statement was what Julian was now taking out of a locked safe. It was a necklace. A cascading river of diamonds and deep blue sapphires anchored by a legendary centerpiece, the 200-carat Thorn sapphire. It was one of the most famous and valuable private jewels in the world. It had belonged to her grandmother. It was unmistakable. "They won't recognize me at first," Kate said, as Julian's assistant fastened the clasp. The cold, heavy weight of the gems settled against her skin. "They will, Ms. Thorne," Julian said. "But by the time they recognize you, they'll already have seen the necklace. The necklace tells the story before you even have to speak." Kate looked at her reflection. The simple wife was gone. Kate Thorne was back. The air outside the Metropolitan Museum of Art was electric. It was the IT event of the New York social calendar, the Future Horizons Gala. The theme was Illuminating Tomorrow, and the guest list was a billionaire's phone book. Marcus Vance arrived in a black Escalade, his chest puffed out in his new velvet tuxedo. Chloe Preston was on his arm, poured into a skin-tight, fire-engine red Versace gown with cutouts that left nothing to the imagination. They were in Marcus's mind, the perfect picture of modern power. They stepped onto the red carpet, and the B-list photographers immediately swarmed them. "Marcus Vance Stratton Pierce," one shouted. "Who are you wearing?" Marcus preened. "Tom Ford, and this is the brilliant Chloe Preston." Chloe did a practiced pose, hand on hip. "Versace." They were a hit. Marcus felt the intoxicating rush of validation. This was where he belonged. He saw his boss, Mr. Harrison, and his wife giving them a polite nod from further down the carpet. "He's seeing me," Marcus thought. "He's seeing me with a winner." A few more steps and they reached the real press line. This was where the serious journalists stood. Sarah Jensen from the Wall Street Journal, David Chen from Bloomberg, and reporters from Forbes and the New York Times. Sarah Jensen, a no-nonsense reporter with a sharp bob, held up a microphone. "Mr. Vance, Sarah Jensen, WSJ. Stratton Pierce has had a tough quarter. Any comment on the rumors of layoffs?" Marcus's smile tightened. "We're streamlining, Sarah. Adapting. You know how it is. In fact, we're on the verge of landing a massive new client. Tonight is about the future. Is that massive new client Ethelred Holdings? David Chen called out. We've heard Augustus Thorne himself may be here tonight. Marcus's heart hammered. The rumor was true. I can't comment on specific clients, he said, trying to sound casual. But let's just say Stratton Pierce is playing in the big leagues. We're exactly where a company like Ethelred should be. He was about to say more to launch into his rehearsed pitch when a strange thing happened. A ripple went through the press corps. Their eyes, which had been on him, suddenly darted to the curb. What's going on? Chloe whispered, annoyed that the attention had shifted. A single black, unassuming Audi A8L, the exact same model as the one Kate had left in, pulled up. It was understated compared to the fleet of Rolls-Royces and Bentleys. The cameras, which had been flashing lazily at Marcus, went silent. The reporters held their breath. Julian Hayes stepped out of the driver's side, walked around, and opened the rear door. Kate emerged. She was not the mousy, simple Kate. She was luminous. The Oscar de la Renta gown moved around her like water. Her hair was swept up, and her face was serene and confident. And then the flashbulbs hit the necklace. The Thorne sapphire. For a second, there was total stunned silence. The reporters, the socialites, the security, everyone froze. They recognized the necklace before they recognized the woman wearing it. It had been on the cover of magazines, in museum exhibits. It belonged to the Thorne family. David Chen from Bloomberg was the first to find his voice. My God, he breathed into his mic. That's the Thorne sapphire. Sarah Jensen's eyes widened. She stared at Kate's face. She'd been a reporter for 20 years. She'd seen a photo of a young Kate Thorne once, years ago, at a university graduation. She put the pieces together. Ms. Thorne, Sarah yelled, pushing forward. Kate Thorne! The name ripped through the air. The cameras exploded. The B-list photographers abandoned their posts and sprinted over, creating a crushing wall of flashes. Ms. Thorne! Kate, is that you? Over here. Forbes magazine. You're Augustus Thorne's daughter. Marcus and Chloe were left in a vacuum. The reporters had literally pushed them aside to get to Kate. What did they call her? Chloe stammered, her red-nailed hand gripping Marcus's arm. Marcus was frozen. His brain could not compute what his eyes were seeing. That was Kate. His wife. His simple wife. But she was wearing. They're mistaken, Marcus said, his voice a dry croak. It's someone who looks like her. A joke. It's a costume party. They're shouting Thorne, Chloe shrieked, her composure cracking. Marcus, they're calling her Kate Thorne. Kate moved calmly, flanked by 2 new security guards who had emerged from the car. She walked toward the steps, a small, polite smile on her face, the sapphires glittering. Marcus, in a fog of panic and rage, did the stupidest thing he could have possibly done. He thought she was crashing his party. He thought she was here to embarrass him. He strode his tuxedo and strode toward her, breaking through the press line. Kate, he shouted. The entire red carpet went silent. The cameras all pivoted to him. Kate, what the hell do you think you're doing here? I told you to stay home. The silence that followed Marcus's shout was absolute. Every camera, every microphone, every eye on the red carpet swiveled from Kate to Marcus and back again. He stood there, face contorted in rage, finger pointing at the most famous heiress in America, who he had just treated like a disobedient child. Chloe Preston had frozen her face a mask of horror as she realized this was not a prank. Kate paused, one foot on the museum steps. She turned to face her husband. Her expression was not angry, not sad. It was one of mild clinical pity. "Hello, Marcus," she said, her voice calm and clear. It carried easily in the sudden hush. Sarah Jensen, the WSJ reporter, sensed the biggest story of her career. She shoved her microphone between them. "Mr. Vance," she said, her voice sharp. You know Miss Thorne." Marcus, still blinded by arrogance, still believing this was some elaborate, pathetic stunt to win him back, scoffed. "Know her. She's my wife, Kate Vance." He turned back to Kate. "What is this? Did you rent that necklace? You're making a fool of yourself." "Security." He was trying to have her removed. A Bloomberg reporter, David Chen, quickly checked his phone. He had an intern pulling up public records. Mr. Vance, there's a marriage license for Marcus Vance and Kate Thorne, filed 4 years ago." The blood drained from Marcus's face. "What? No, her name is Kate. I don't know her last name. She was an orphan." "I was never an orphan, Marcus," Kate said, finally taking a step toward him. The security team tensed, but she held up a hand. She was now standing directly in front of him, the sapphire necklace pulsing with blue light. "My name is Kate Thorne. My father is Augustus Thorne. Ethelred Holdings is my family's company." Marcus's world stopped. The sound of the cameras, the flashing lights, the gasps from the crowd, it all faded into a distant, high-pitched ringing. He stared at her. The simple wife, the provincial volunteer, the woman he'd mocked for not understanding ambition. 90 billion, he whispered. The number, a figure he'd only read in Forbes, came out of his mouth as a choked breath. "You mocked my simplicity, Marcus," Kate said, her voice still quiet, but now amplified by a dozen microphones. "You told me I was dead weight. You said I was provincial and embarrassing." "Kate, baby," he stammered, reaching for her arm. This is a test, right? A wonderful test. You were testing me to see if I loved you for you." He laughed, a desperate, broken sound. "I passed right. I married you when I thought you had nothing." Kate looked at his hand, still gripping her arm, until he slowly, fearfully let go. "You married me when you thought I had nothing, Marcus. That's true," she said. "But you were ashamed of me when you started to have something. You didn't want the simple wife anymore. You wanted a queen. I believe that was the word." Chloe Preston, who had been inching backward, let out a small, strangled squeak. The reporters, smelling blood, turned their cameras on her. "And who is this?" Sarah Jensen asked, pointing her microphone at Chloe. Marcus looked at Chloe in panic. Chloe, realizing her association with Marcus was now career-ending. Poison immediately put her hands up. "I'm his colleague. That's it. I just came with him as a colleague. I barely know him. You were wearing the dress he bought for me." Kate noted, her voice flat. "The one you picked out. The power couple wife dress." Chloe went pale. She turned, and in her Versace gown and stilettos, practically ran back down the red carpet, pushing through the stunned crowd. Marcus was alone. He turned back to Kate, his eyes wild with terror. "Kate, please. I love you. I didn't mean it. It was just talk. It was stress from work. You know how I get. We can fix this." "No, we can't, Marcus," Kate said. She gestured to the press. "You wanted to be the center of attention. You wanted to be seen. You wanted to impress the real players and talk about real money. Well, here they are. The Wall Street Journal, Bloomberg, Forbes, The Times. They're all listening. This is your moment. She adjusted the thorn sapphire. You told me I didn't have the dress, the conversation, or the name. You told me I was a nobody. She leaned in her voice, dropping to a whisper that only he and the closest microphones could hear. You were right about one thing, Marcus. I'm not Mrs. Vance. I am Kate Thorne. And you are the nobody. She turned away from him. The gala organizers who had been watching in horror rushed forward. Ms. Thorne, Ms. Thorne, please right this way. Your father is waiting for you in the private salon. Kate walked up the steps of the Metropolitan Museum of Art, the cameras following her every move, the flashbulbs reflecting 1,000 times in the facets of the thorn sapphire. She never looked back. Marcus Vance was left alone on the red carpet. The reporters who a moment ago had been his adoring audience now turned on him like a pack of wolves. Mr. Vance, how does it feel to be married to $90 billion? Did you know? Did you mock your wife for being simple? What did you mean you told her to stay home? Are you the biggest fool in New York City? He couldn't speak. He just stood there, his $10,000 velvet tuxedo feeling like a cheap costume, his face frozen in a silent scream of catastrophic public and irreversible ruin. The doors of the gala closed behind Kate, shutting out the cacophony of the red carpet. The sound was instantly muffled, replaced by the polite murmur of the party and a string quartet. She was immediately surrounded by the city's true power brokers. People who hadn't given Marcus Vance the time of day were now rushing to greet her. Kate, darling. What a surprise. Ms. Thorne, a pleasure to see you. Your father is holding court. She navigated the room with an inborn grace Marcus never knew she possessed. She wasn't the mousy, quiet woman he'd bossed around. She was the woman who had grown up in these rooms with these people. This was her native habitat, not the small library he'd relegated her to. She was escorted to a private, roped-off salon overlooking the main hall. There, sitting in a wing-back chair with a glass of seltzer, was Augustus Thorne. He was a man in his late 70s, with a shock of white hair and eyes that looked like they could burn holes in steel. He was quite simply the most powerful man in the room. He stood as she entered. "You're late," he said, his voice a gravelly rumble. "I was making an introduction," Kate replied, kissing his cheek. "So I saw." A small, rare smile touched his lips. "The ironclad prenup, as Susan Preston calls it. That was my idea, you know." "I know, Dad," Kate said. "I told you he was a tin-pot fool, a peacock, all feathers, no substance." "You did," Kate said, a wave of exhaustion hitting her. "I'm sorry, you were right." Augustus put a hand on her shoulder. "Don't be sorry. Be smart. You bought a $90 billion education for the price of a 4-year heartache. It's the best deal we ever made." He steered her to the balcony. "Now look down there." Kate looked. On the red carpet, visible below Marcus, was still frozen a pathetic statue in the flashing lights. But inside, the real damage was happening. Mr. Harrison, the CEO of Stratton Pierce Capital, was in a furious, whispered conversation with his board members. He looked up, saw Kate standing next to the Augustus Thorne, and went pale. He'd just seen his firm's reputation and his own publicly incinerated by his idiot VP. Marcus had not only insulted his simple wife, he had insulted the daughter of the wealthiest, most sought-after client in the world. Outside, the scene had turned even more pathetic. Marcus's boss, Mr. Harrison, had stormed out of the gala. He marched right up to Marcus, ignoring the press. "Vance!" he roared, his face purple. Marcus jumped, startled. "Mr. Harrison, sir, this is a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding. You brought your mistress to an event and publicly humiliated your wife. And your wife," he lowered his voice to a venomous hiss, "is Kate Thorne. Did you know that, you catastrophic imbecile? No, I swear I had no idea. That makes it worse. You didn't just know and hide it. You were too stupid to even find out. You've made me, my wife, and my entire company look like fools. We're a laughing stock. Stratton Pierce is done. Ethelred will blacklist us. Every rival will use this. You are a liability of spectacular proportions. Sir, I can fix this. I can introduce you." Harrison stared at him. "Vance, you're fired. Get out of my sight. Don't come to the office. Your security pass is already deactivated. I'll have your cheap suits mailed to you in a box." Harrison turned and marched back inside, leaving Marcus to the mercy of the press, who had just heard every word. "You're fired. Mr. Vance, your boss just called you an imbecile." Marcus stumbled backward, blinded by the flashes, his life unraveling in real time. He tripped over a velvet rope, falling to his knees. The cameras flashed, capturing the perfect image of his downfall, the arrogant man brought low alone on the red carpet of his greatest ambition. He finally scrambled to his feet and ran. He pushed through the crowd, past the line of limousines, and just kept running down Fifth Avenue in his velvet tuxedo, the sounds of laughter and camera shutters following him into the dark. Inside, Kate took a sip of champagne. She watched him run. "Well," Augustus said, "that's that. Now let's go. We have a 2 a.m. philanthropy meeting with the board of this museum. They need a new wing." Kate nodded. "Julian," she said. "Yes, Miss Thorne. Have the locks on the penthouse changed tonight, and have a security detail posted outside the door. My soon-to-be ex-husband is no longer welcome." "It's already done," Julian replied. "The locks were changed the moment you stepped out of the car." Kate looked at her father. "It's good to be back." Marcos didn't stop running until he was blocks away, his lungs burning. He finally hailed a cab, his hands shaking so violently he could barely get his wallet out. "Park Avenue," he croaked. He got to the penthouse, and his key card was rejected. Access denied. What? No. He swiped it again and again. He pounded on the door. "Kate. Kate, let me in. This is my apartment." A calm, deep voice spoke from behind him. "Mr. Vance?" Marcus spun around. 2 men in dark suits. Kate's security were standing by the elevator. "This is no longer your residence," the first man said. "You are to have no further contact with Ms. Thorne. A legal representative will be in touch. This is my home. My things are in there. Your personal effects will be packaged and sent to an address of your choosing. Now please leave the building, or we will have you removed for trespassing." Defeated, Marcus stumbled back to the elevator. He had nowhere to go. He tried calling Chloe. The call went straight to voicemail. He tried again. Her number was disconnected. She had already vanished, a ghost who had taken her Versace dress and run for the hills. He ended up in a sterile $400 a night hotel room in Midtown, the velvet tuxedo still on. He turned on the TV. His face was everywhere. "Hair-raising," screamed the New York Post cover. "Simple wife, filthy rich. Vance's folly." The man who mocked a $90 billion heiress. His photo on his knees on the red carpet was on every channel. CNN, Fox Business, MSNBC. They were all playing the clip, his arrogant shout, Kate's calm rebuttal, his boss firing him. He was not just a fool, he was a global punchline. The next morning at 7 a.m. sharp, there was a knock on his hotel room door. A grim-looking man in a suit handed him a thick envelope. "You've been served, Mr. Vance." Divorce papers. He ripped them open, his mind seizing on one last desperate hope. Half. Even in a divorce, he was married to her. He'd get half. He'd be a billionaire. He'd still win. He flipped through the pages looking for the settlement. Instead, he found a copy of a document he vaguely remembered. The prenuptial agreement. He read the clause. "Hereby waives any and all right, title, and interest in any and all property assets or expectancies, including but not limited to trusts, inheritances, or assets held by family corporations discovered or undisclosed at the time of signing." He didn't understand. He called the number on the letterhead. Susan Preston's office. I want to speak to Susan Preston. I'm Marcus Vance." He was put on hold for 10 minutes. Finally, a sharp, cold voice came on the line. "Mr. Vance, I'm surprised you called. This prenup. It's fraudulent. She lied to me. She misrepresented herself. I'll sue. I'll take half." Susan Preston actually laughed. "Mr. Vance, you were the one who demanded the prenup. You were the one who brought it to the table, desperate to protect your $150,000 a year salary from an orphan." Ms. Thorne simply had her legal team clarify the language. "You signed it. You initialed every page. You were so arrogant, so sure of your own superiority, that you signed away your claim to the largest private fortune in America because you didn't want to pay for your own lawyer to read it." "I'll fight this," he shrieked. "Go ahead," Susan said, her voice bored. "No credible law firm in New York will touch your case. You're a pariah. You haven't just been fired, you've been blacklisted. The SEC is also opening an investigation into your conduct at Stratton Pierce, specifically regarding your insider claims about Ethelred. You have bigger problems than this divorce, Mr. Vance." What does she want?" he whispered, defeated. "She wants nothing from you. The divorce will be finalized. The penthouse, which was never in your name, it was owned by a shell corporation belonging to Ethelred, is already on the market. The cars have been reclaimed. You will receive exactly what you brought into this marriage: your ambition, your arrogance, and your designer suits, which are currently in a box at a FedEx in Hell's Kitchen. Goodbye." The line clicked dead. Marcus slid down the hotel room wall. He was ruined. He hadn't just lost a $90 billion fortune. He had lost his job. He had lost his mistress. He had lost his home. He had lost his name. He had mocked his wife's simplicity, and in return, his entire complex, carefully constructed life had been annihilated by a single, simple signature. He'd been too arrogant to read. 6 months later, Marcus Vance sat in a greasy laminate and vinyl booth at a diner in Hackensack, New Jersey. The smell of stale coffee and fryer oil clung to him. His suit was a polyester blend nightmare from a discount outlet, a size too large in the shoulders, and the collar of his cheap shirt was stained with a faint ring of sweat. He was trying desperately to get a regional manager for a local auto parts distributor to sign a 36-month contract for cloud-based inventory software. He was failing. His Tom Ford suits were long gone sold on an online consignment shop for pennies on the dollar to pay his first month's rent. The Vacheron Constantin watch had paid for the deposit on his bleak studio apartment. He was by every conceivable metric a ghost, a man who had been given the world and had been too arrogant to even see it. He hadn't just been blacklisted, he had been erased. He was a cautionary tale, a finance bro boogeyman, and now not even that. He was just a commission-only salesman named Mark. He looked up, his eyes weary at the small, buzzing CRT television mounted in the diner's corner. It was on Bloomberg, and she was on it. The Kate on the screen was not the mousy provincial woman he had tormented. This woman was standing on a stage at a packed auditorium, bathed in professional, flattering light. The chyron beneath her read, Kate Thorne, Chief Operating Officer, Ethelred Holdings. She was wearing a sharp, cobalt blue Armani power suit. The color was a deliberate choice, a quiet nod, perhaps, to the simple blue dress he had once mocked. In the 6 months since the gala, an event now referred to in financial circles as the Vance implosion, Kate had not just taken a title. She had seized the role. The board of directors, initially skeptical of the prodigal daughter, returning after a 4-year sabbatical, had been utterly silenced in her first 90 days. She had moved with a speed and precision that belied her time away. She had identified and mercilessly cut 3 underperforming divisions, reallocated $4 billion in capital, and personally negotiated a green energy merger in Germany that had the entire market buzzing. She was not just Augustus Thorne's daughter. She was his successor. She was, as her father had always known, a natural. Today, however, she wasn't just talking about mergers. She was launching her passion project, the one she had been building in her mind for 4 years. Today, she said, her voice clear and strong, resonating with the stockholders and the press, Ethelred Holdings is launching the Thorne Foundation for Literacy. For 4 years, I worked on the ground floor anonymously. I spent my time with people our society often renders invisible. Her eyes, steady and sure, scanned the crowd. People who are called simple or unambitious simply because they are overlooked. People who have profound, brilliant ideas but lack the resources to make them heard. My time away taught me that there is a deep, fundamental need for those resources, not as charity, but as an investment. In the diner, Marcus stared, his watery scrambled eggs forgotten. The auto parts manager was looking at his phone, bored. My father built an empire on seeing value where others saw none. Kate continued, her voice warming. He invested in ideas when everyone else called them provincial or too small to matter. I plan to continue that legacy. We will not be distracted by the loud, the flashy, or the superficial. We will find strength in substance. We will find power in what is real. The applause was thunderous, a standing ovation. In the front row, Augustus Thorne didn't just nod. He was beaming, slapping the shoulder of the board member next to him. As she stepped off the stage, she was surrounded. A man from her past approached her hesitantly. It was Mr. Harrison, her former husband's ex-boss. His firm, Stratton Pierce, had survived, but just barely. It had been forced to issue a groveling public apology, had been dropped by half its clients, and had purged its entire senior executive team, including Harrison's close friends. Ms. Thorne, he said, his voice humbled, his face aged 10 years. What you're doing, it's remarkable. Truly. Congratulations. Kate looked at him, the man who had sat by amused, while her husband humiliated her at a dinner party. She gave him a curt, polite, and utterly cold nod. Thank you for coming, Mr. Harrison. I do hope your firm's new Ethics and Compliance Committee is proving effective." His face flushed a deep red. He had been dismissed and he knew it. Finally, Sarah Jensen from the Wall Street Journal got through the crowd. "Ms. Thorne, an incredible speech. Everyone's wondering, looking back on him, on that night. Do you have any regrets about the way it happened, about the time you lost?" Kate paused, looking at the reporter. She thought of Marcus in his cheap suit, in his lonely apartment, a man who had evaporated into the insignificance he so desperately feared. "I don't have regrets, Sarah," she said, a small, knowing smile on her lips. "I have data. I ran an experiment for 4 years to find genuine authenticity. The experiment failed, but I collected invaluable information. And like any good CEO, she said, I've used that data to make a much, much better decision to divest from a failing asset and to reinvest in myself." She walked away, not just flanked by security, but by her team, her real partners. Later that day, she stood in her new office, a vast, light-filled space at the very top of the Ethelred Tower. She looked out at the New York skyline, the city she now held in her hand. She had been mocked for her simplicity, but it was that very simplicity that had been her armor, her test, and ultimately her weapon. She had proven that true power doesn't need to scream, it just needs to be. And far below, in a diner in New Jersey, Marcus Vance finally looked away from the TV, his coffee cold. He turned to the auto parts manager, his voice cracking with a feigned, desperate enthusiasm. "So," he said, "if you just look at this brochure, can I at least interest you in a demo?" In the end, Marcus learned the hardest lesson. True value is never loud. He chased the glitter and ignored the gold. Kate, finally free, stepped into the power she had always held, reminding the world that simplicity is not weakness, but often the quiet confidence of the truly powerful. His arrogance cost him everything. Her humility allowed her to gain her life back. The Tycoon's heir was hidden in plain sight, and the man who mocked her simplicity became a footnote in her incredible story. What did you think of Marcus's downfall? Was it karma, or was he just a fool? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you loved this story of justice and hidden power, make sure to hit that like button, share this video with your friends, and please subscribe to our channel for more real-life drama every week.